Every year, the EU produces legislation that affects over 450 million EU citizens. But how does this lawmaking process actually work? Like, which EU institutions are involved, and how does the separation of power between them look like? That is the point of this video, to explain how the EU makes laws. Most laws in the EU are made for something called the ordinary legislative procedure, and that involves these three institutions. So remember them. They are the European Commission, the European Parliament, and the Council of the EU. And here we have a very simplified explanation of this ordinary legislative procedure. So here to the left, where it all starts, we have the Commission, who initiates the law. And this initiated law proposal then goes to the Council and to the Parliament. And through something called co-decision, they can pass the law. And that means that they both have to approve the law for it to get passed. Okay, so the Commission initiates a law proposal. But before that, they of course have to internally gather all the relevant information, to know which problems there are in the Union and which kind of law is needed to fix those. And then they also have to assess if EU action is even justified, because some areas are solely the responsibility of the national governments of the individual member states. So they have to check if the EU has a right to act in this area they want to legislate about. And then when they start writing the legislation, they have to formulate its goals, what possible impact it could have. And then, of course, they always, consult different groups. They have, many groups of experts available to them. They, of course, also consult businesses that could possibly be affected by the new law. And, of course, they also consult with the EU citizens. And then when it's time to initiate, something called the College of Commissioners agree on starting the initiative. And here we see the current College of Commissioners, and they are the ones who make up the Commission. In total, there are 27 commissioners. That means one from every member state. And these commissioners are kind of like the EU's government, the executive branch. And there's one commissioner for every area of responsibility. So there are one commissioner responsible for energy, another commissioner responsible for agriculture and food. And by a simple majority vote, they can agree to start the initiative. And so after a law has been initiated by the Commission, it's up to these two institutions, the Parliament and the Council. And so the Parliament looks like this. It's quite big, because it has 705 members, and they are elected every 5 years by the people of the EU. So this institution is representing the people. While the Council, who looks like this, represents the national governments. And so every government sends one minister to the Council. And which minister they send depends on the subject discussed. So if they're about to vote on a law about agriculture, they send their agriculture ministers to vote. But if the law is about, say, economics, they send their finance ministers. So the Council has some different configurations depending on the subject discussed, but it is one institution. Okay, so now that I've explained the different institutions, I'm going to try to explain this ordinary legislative procedure in more detail. And so, as we've said, the Commission initiated the law, and the law gets passed to the Parliament. And now the Parliament has two options. They can either just approve the law in its entirety, or they can amend the law, meaning that they change some things in the law that they don't agree with. And then Parliament passes the law to the Council. Now the Council also has two options, the same two options. They can approve it or amend it. So those are the options of the Council and the Parliament. And to visualize this a bit better, I've made this. So the Commission initiates the law, sends it to the Parliament, and the Parliament can approve the law, and then the Council can approve the law, and then it's a passed law. And so this is the easiest and fastest route for the EU to make a law. The Commission initiates, the Parliament approves, and the Council approves. and then we have a new law. But it could also go something like this, where the parliament doesn't agree with some things in the laws, and so they amend it. And then the council, if they agree with the amendments, they just approve it and it gets passed. And so this is also a pretty fast route. If the council doesn't agree with the parliament's amendments, they then can send it back to the parliament with their own amendments. And now the parliament has 3 options instead of 2. They can now actually just say no and cancel the whole procedure, and there will be no law. But they can also say yes if they agree with the council's changes, but they can also send it back again with new amendments to council. Now, if the council agrees with the parliament's changes this time, and maybe the parliament compromised and sent back something that both could agree on, then the council, passes the law, and that's it. But if they don't agree with the changes, they then can't send it back again with new amendments, because that would be crazy to just send it back and forth again with new amendments forever. And the council also doesn't have the power, as the parliament had, to just straight up cancel the law. So in this stage, if they still can't agree, then they set up what's called a conciliation committee. So this conciliation committee is made up of 50% delegates from the parliament and 50% delegates from the council. And they try to reach a compromise. And if they can't, then the whole procedure is over, there is no law. But if they manage to find a compromise, then they agree on a joint proposal. And this joint proposal then means that the law gets passed, because this proposal goes back to the parliament and to the council, and then they approve it, because of course they are going to approve it because they've agreed on it in the committee. And here we see some stats showing the percentage of laws adopted in the first reading. And in the first reading, that just means that the parliament approves the law, the council approves the law, and it's adopted. They don't go back and forth with different amendments to a second or to a third reading. And so, as we can see, over time, it has gotten more and more common for a law to be passed already in the first reading, and it has gotten really uncommon, and basically it never happens anymore that we go to a conciliation committee. And the reason for this is probably because all these institutions, the parliament, the council, and the commission, in the earlier processes of this lawmaking process, they meet in unofficial trilogues, they call them, and there they compromise and find out what they agree about, what they don't agree about. And so much of the compromises have already been made by the time that the law reaches the first reading. And so most laws get approved really fast. And if I think about it, it makes sense that the commission wouldn't really initiate a law if it thought it would fail in the parliament and council. So they only initiate laws that they think would succeed. And so that's why we see such a high success rate. And so that's the ordinary legislative procedure of the European Union. The Commission initiates, and then the Council and the Parliament, through co-decision, passes the law, and we have a new law. But I also want to mention another institution that's very important. That's the Court of Justice, who is the judicial branch of the EU and who interprets and enforces the law. So they are not a part of the legislative procedure, but they are of importance to the lawmaking process. Yeah, quickly before I finish this video, there were just some things I didn't mention because I wanted to keep it simplified, but I'm just gonna mention them quickly now. So the EU also uses delegated and implementing acts, which allows the Commission to update or clarify parts of existing law. And I'm gonna be honest that I don't completely understand this myself, but as you can hear in the name, delegated acts, it is about the EU and Council delegating some legislative powers to the Commission, because some parts of laws, need to be regularly updated, and then it's, good if the Commission can do that. But these powers always, originate from the Parliament and Council, so they can, revoke them if they think the Commission is misusing them. But then there are also different types of legislation. Some are binding, others are more like recommendations, and some apply to all countries, and some are, targeted at specific member states. And we're not going to go through all, the different legislations, but just so you know that there are different kinds. In some cases, Parliament have reduced powers in this co-decision. For example, about legislation about foreign policy, where the Council has more say than the Parliament, and that's for historical reasons, because historically the Parliament has been really weak, and then as time has gone on, the Parliament has gotten more powers and more powerful, but there's still some areas where the Council is still powerful than the Parliament. But that was it. Thank you for watching. If I did any mistakes, feel free to correct me in the comments, or if anything was confusing, feel free to ask a question. But that was it. Thank you.